Let's talk all about AI in business. It's hosted by Brent Muller. Welcome to the Future Proof Podcast.
Hi, and welcome to the latest episode of the Future Proof Podcast. I am your host, Brent Muller. I am joined today by Henry Gordon-Smith from Agritecture, as you can see on his shirt. So, Henry, welcome. Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So first, we always start with the founder's journey. Tell me about your background leading up to starting Agritecture.
Yeah, I was a political science student. I had nothing to do with agriculture. I grew up in big cities like Hong Kong and Tokyo. So I was really not a farmer and totally disconnected. But I had a professor that was teaching about water wars and environmental security and essentially the climate crisis. And this really got in my head. And I said, I need to dedicate my life to solving this problem. I went the policy route and was super turned off by the public sector, the bureaucracy, and the sort of just trying to maintain the status quo and maintain.
Totally get that.
It was just awful. It was awful. So I was like, oh shit, I need to get into business now. And I know nothing about business. So I started talking to some family friends who were successful in business. And they said, look, business is about finding a niche and filling it better than anyone else, put simply. So I started saying, okay, well, how am I going to find my niche? There's so many problems in the environment, for example, that we could solve, but how do I find one that I can make money off of? Well, I had experience blogging. I was a blogger for my university in the early days of blogging. And so I started 3 different blogs about different sustainability topics. And one of those blogs was about bringing agriculture into cities and applying architectural thinking to it. And it was called Agritecture. And Agritecture became the most popular of the 3 blogs and was the most interesting to me. So I sort of had found the niche to some extent. I dropped the other 2 blogs and I kept doing that. I started studying agriculture, food security, and urban agriculture online. I got my master's in sustainability management. And 3 years after I'd started the blog, I started getting consulting requests through my blog for different organizations that needed data about how these farms exist, how much they cost, how much they can grow, what the best technologies are. And we launched the world's first urban agriculture consultancy with a heavy focus on the technologies that are necessary to do this. That was the origin story of Agritecture.
Wow, that's fantastic. All right. So as you started to get these consulting gigs, right? Tell me how Agritecture has changed, grown, or evolved, right? And your vision for it now.
Well, I mean, it's always was so organic, right? It's been like a sort of, I think a big part of our business model is the same. It's sort of like an attract, don't chase model, right? We create the content, we talk about the latest trends, we show authenticity, and we attract clients to us because they really can tell that we know what we're talking about and that we're trustworthy enough to brainstorm their ideas with them. And we give so much free information through our blogs, our webinars, our content, that there's just a lot of trust that's built in that. So the business model is really the same as far as sort of trying to keep a pulse on what's the latest, sharing insights, almost like breadcrumbs, but still keeping enough information that's necessary to give the high level quality sort of premium services we provide. But I would say a couple things have changed. I mean, we started the consultancy in 2014, right? So we're not new anymore. One of the things that's changed is that we've gone even more global. So we've already crossed 50 countries as far as that we've served as a relatively small company. So that's like, it just gets more and more.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's been amazing. So certain markets like the GCC in the Middle East has really grown in recent years. I would say that's a bigger shift. That region post-COVID has had a lot more interest in food security and local agriculture. I would say also the scale of our projects. In the early years, we did a lot of schools and nonprofits because we didn't have as big of a portfolio. Now we've had clients like IKEA, some of the largest private equity firms in the world, largest sovereign wealth funds in the world. Cities like Atlanta and Dallas have been our clients. So the prestige and scale of our client base has also grown. We've also broadened out beyond urban agriculture. I would say actually many of our projects are outside of the city. They're still focused on local agriculture, supplying local communities, and they're still focused on providing pesticide-free, cleaner, more sustainably grown food, at least from a water use and land use perspective. So, those projects have been really exciting. And I would say, for those of you who don't know, a lot of the technologies we're talking about are greenhouses, hydroponics, vertical farming, which is where our bread and butter started. But for example, we not so long ago completed a project with Microsoft involving AI on hops, right? The key ingredient in beer, which is not grown indoors at all. So we are now climate smart agriculture consultants, I would say even more than urban or controlled environment agriculture consultants, which
Wow.
is really, really exciting. So basically anything fruits and vegetables, anything horticulture we do these days, whether it's indoors or outdoors and on a global scale. So it's been a really exciting evolution for us.
Well, I'd imagine that, like, so the hops is a great one, right? So where you're dovetailing into one of the biggest trends out there is the explosion of craft breweries, right? Yeah. So talk a little bit about how you help them with that, right? Just throw some examples for the people in the audience that don't kind of get exactly how that works, because it's to me when you talked about the greenhouses and some of the stuff that you're helping with, I think it would help to connect those dots for people that don't know.
Well, the Four Hops project, which is what it was called, is super interesting as far as a climate for agriculture adaptation project. So one reason why it's interesting is just because most people are not aware that climate change is already damaging so many crops. And so sort of think about it this way. There's a typical environment that plants need to thrive. And when it's outdoors, your ability to control that environment is zero, right? So if weather changes, the standard conditions for growth of hops in this case is challenged. And so what does that mean for the farmer? That means that the farmer is getting lower yields and is getting, in the case of hops, lower acid content, the flavor that creates that interesting flavor that you need for any kind of beer. So those are the two metrics that the buyer of the hops is going to judge buying the hops or not. So farmers have more and more losses due to something out of their control. Now, the Czech Republic, which is the third largest producer of hops in the world, has been experiencing droughts over the last decade due to climate change. And, those droughts have actually not just reduced yields, but they've actually created volatility. Some years have gone up, some years have gone down, and the predictability has just disappeared. So farmers are now abandoning this. The buyer of the hops, Asahi, one of the biggest, beer companies in the world, which owns Pilsner Urquell, which has the most hop production that they source in the Czech Republic, they were really concerned about this. Meanwhile, Microsoft had some AI tools that they wanted to apply to agriculture. So they brought us in, and what we did is we set up 6 pilot farms with IoT, Internet of Things technology, to measure aspects of soil health, water retention, plant growth. We set up machine vision cameras to track the growth of the plants and create new data sets that were non-existent for hop production to give us insights into what's happening. And what that allows the farmer to do is allows them to manage that volatility. You can start to predict across massive scale. We're talking about 5,000 hectares of hop production, right? Massive scale. So, they get some more predictability where they can actually control labor and irrigation in a smarter way. So suddenly, although the environment is changing and becoming less predictable, they have new data and new AI tools that can analyze that data to provide them insights and actions that can help them adapt to the new normal. And this is happening across every crop category, everywhere in the world. No one is safe. And so this is really important work. And it's been really exciting for us to work at that scale and to help the farmers be empowered with reasonably levels of technology and levels of insights that they can act on.
That's huge. And so, wow, I go so many places with that, but you start to think about how that data that you're capturing, the AI's ability to process it and help predict, can totally change not only their ability to manage those different shifts like you're talking about due to the climate, right? Whether it's a drought, whether it's any kind of, I guess, weather pattern, right, or soil impact, right, all of that. What I'm thinking is though is not only the yield, right, which is a huge labor and financial hit, right, if they don't manage this, but their ability to do things the right way, right, by adapting. Like, I'm just thinking that the alternative, if you didn't have that, how many crops would they have lost? How many of those farms might it, whether they went out of business or they would have struggled mightily without this? And so do you guys measure that impact? Because again, I know you're going in to be able to provide this. But if you're in 50 countries, I would imagine the impact is amazing. And it's different in different parts of the world, depending on how the climate is changing.
Yeah, there's a lot of variables to consider when looking at impact. But if we just stick with this case study, right, these 6 farms that we selected are respected farms in their community. So
Right.
as they utilize this technology and they implement water saving solutions and solutions that reduce pesticide use, because this data can also help them manage pest outbreaks. Pest outbreaks increase as the climate shifts as well. We get new pests, right? So they're improving labor, pesticide use, and water use. So, when it comes to especially traditional agriculture, outdoor agriculture, you're looking for champion farmers that can basically be the example for the other farmers to adopt. So, this is the pathway for widespread adoption. However, the harvest only happens once a year. So there is a, time that's just needed to get the evidence and respond to that, right? This project
Right.
is in its 3rd year, but adoption is starting to spread across this. And we're actually seeing that hop projects around the world are starting to mimic some of the open access lessons that we've shared from this through the website, through webinars, etc. We're seeing this in the Yakima Valley, where there's a lot of hop production, for example. So that's how the change really happens. As far as agriculture and how we measure impact, I mean, we are really a planning company, right? So we really help solve those problems. That's our sweet spot is what's the problem? How can we solve it? Do you want to plant a new farm? Do you want to improve the existing farm? We don't really stick with the farms that long afterwards. We do check with them. We keep relationships with them. And for us, it's really like, are they still going and are they growing? That's it. But,
Right.
I think the other day I did a calculation. I mean, we're talking about tens of millions of people who have been impacted by the fresh produce that we've strengthened or started to produce based on that, and we're a team of 6. So, I'm pretty excited about that impact over our tenure,
I would
300
imagine. Yeah.
300 projects in 50 countries. And we're looking at new ways to scale up our impact beyond the services we provide and some other digital tools, which we can talk about as well.
Yeah, that's was my next question is how do you then, because again, you're a consulting company first, right? So you're on these projects, but the results of this stuff need to go much broader and farther and wider, right? And almost the reason we started this podcast in the first place, right? You're in a similar situation. Like you have these great impacts, but you can't help everybody, right? With a team of 6. How do you get that message out? So what are your thoughts on?
So yeah, I mean, there's 3 parts to our business. We talked a bit about the first part, which is our blog and our content, which is still a huge part of our DNA because it's part of our business model, but also
Right.
our authentic desire to help transform the food system. And that authenticity, that DNA is so important to the success of any business. So we actively maintain that. The second part is the consulting services that were built off the demand that came from that content. The third part really started in during COVID when our services suffered and our ability to reach customers went down as events stopped. So we started brainstorming internally about what digital tools we could create to help achieve our mission at a greater scale. And as you know very well, digital tools can have a lot of scalability and a lot of impact and
Absolutely.
replicability. So we started saying, well, we've done so many feasibility studies for greenhouses and vertical farms, and we still keep seeing all these people that are not working with us repeat the same mistakes. And it's so frustrating when you care and you see people just making the same mistakes over and over again. One of the most common mistakes, for example, is an obsession with technology versus an obsession over the market. So when you're planning a new farm, you need to obsess over the customer and who's going to buy your product at what price and
Absolutely.
how many there are. But people get really excited about the technology, the lights, the greenhouses, the robots. And what they do is they end up locking themselves into technologies that don't actually match the needs of the market. So even that simple part of planning is a best practice that you could create a tool to help people avoid that. So what did we do? We went through our feasibility study process. We looked at all of our past data and we created the most simplified version of a feasibility study tool and put it online. It's called Agritecture Designer, and it's the world's first farm planning software. So what it does is you log in, you take online classes to get educated about different types of crops, different types of business models, different types of technologies. Then you can do your market research on the software to get to understand the price point of the products for the market. And then you can literally model an unlimited number of greenhouses and vertical farms and container farms anywhere in the world. It automatically brings in the climate data, We have a baseline set of utility, labor, water, energy data, tax data, anything that you would need to get an economic assessment. And within minutes, literally, if you spend 15 minutes filling in the form, you will get a first snapshot of what that business will look like, dramatically cutting the time needed to plan these farms, accelerating the education and contextualization of these projects in the location where the user is, and just helping them avoid common mistakes. And this is really what we're doing to scale our impact. This is how we can help hundreds of thousands of farms
Love
versus
this.
past clients. So
Yes.
it's been a challenge. We're a
Yeah.
service company, and building a software is a whole other beast. But
Yes, it is.
our customers and our software, they love it, and we've had 3 farms already built from the software where they've gone through this journey. And we're really proud of that, not to mention thousands
You
of
should
users
be, right?
got
Yeah.
information, and actually people who have avoided building farms, which I think is also a win. Sometimes you just shouldn't build the farm. You don't have the
Right.
budget, your market isn't ready for it, or you should build a different type of farm. And I'm proud of the farms that are not built just as much as the ones that are built.
Yeah, I love that. So it's so funny you said the coolest thing is, and this I've seen this on 3 or 4 of our interviews so far, is a services-based company realize they can't get to enough people, but they have a phenomenal solution, right? So they build a product. And I love that you're doing that because that's how you reach hundreds of thousands of people the right way. You know they need the solution, right? Hey, let's build it and get it in front of them. So even if we can't help them personally, they can go through and at least get better decision making, right? And I feel like, Henry, that this is where AI is helping us go there faster, right? And so I'll give you a good example. So we talked to Kim from Max Potential a few weeks ago, and she gave us this prompt. She says that changed her life, right? It'll be coming out to everybody. But it was kind of what should she build next? And it's really geared for the founder, right? And the CEO, like, is this a good idea? Right. And I said to her, I'm like, this should be in every entrepreneur's first set of, prompts for ChatGPT, right? Is should I do this? Like you're talking about, should I build a farm? And if the answer is yes, right, and if it's no, that's like you said, hey, we're saving that land and for a good reason. But if the answer is yes, right, then the next thing is, hey, I should be doing some sort of assessment or analysis, right? And hopefully agritecture software is the first step. And so I feel like if we can start to think about things in those kind of steps, we're going to get so much better starting points for entrepreneurs that have great ideas. But I love the fact that you've built a product from your learning of your services because you know that you have a good solution. And to me, it's like now that this is going to be hopefully a rocket ship to take off because that's how you help a ton of people. So for everybody listening, right, this is what Henry's doing. It's kind of what several, Amber from that we had on earlier, she did the same thing. A consulting company, learned a bunch and said, hey, we can build products out of this. And you're doing the same things. How do you, now that you're there, how do you see AI, data automation impacting this, accelerating it? Like, where's it going to change the industry?
I mean, in agriculture, there's a lot of ways broadly specifically, let's say, that AI is already making an impact and will make more of an impact. I mean, I sort of talked about just basically data from the field that lets farmers,
which is huge, by the way. Yeah.
Which is huge. Another big area is automation, right? I was in Canada last week and I saw a cutting edge strawberry harvesting robot, and the AI algorithm in this robot allows the robot to actually learn from its mistakes every time it reaches for a strawberry to optimize it. This robot now has a 90% success rate in picking. We're talking about 40% savings in the field. Labor in the field is still the highest cost for farmers, and their margins
Is it really? I did not know that.
Yeah, and the margin is still so thin. So these robots have real potential, especially in the Western world in the short term, to have an impact on agriculture and these farmers that are struggling from all kinds of directions. So, that is just a really interesting application as well. Another one is digital twins, right? Is sort of saying, let's replicate the farm in a digital format and let's run scenarios for its future. And I think in a future that's more volatile, that is really interesting. And that's maybe one that aligns more with our software. When you think about the future of our software, we think a bit more about, okay, now you've planned your farm, let's create a digital twin of it and let's continue to run scenarios with AI about how you can optimize the farm that we've planned for you. That is a much bigger software that I'm going to have to raise more money for, but we'll see in time if I can build that as we get through these next steps. But that's really where that would go. And there's already some examples of that. Priva, which is one of our investors, has a software that will create a digital twin of your greenhouse and will run scenarios for the best places to source energy from, right? So energy prices shift and all this. So the greenhouse can choose the most sustainable, the most affordable sources of energy, and it's working even when you're sleeping. So I think there's great applications to that as well. For me personally, I mean, I still think LLMs have huge potential and are not being applied enough in agriculture. For me as an entrepreneur, I think a lot of things you said resonated. I wish I'd had some of these tools when I was younger and getting started, obviously, because I'm a solo founder, so I don't have any co-founder to bounce ideas off of. But now my LLMs that I use, I can actually bounce a lot of ideas off of and push the boundaries of how big I think. Sometimes I find myself not thinking big enough. And, the other day I put in, for example, what's the billion-dollar version of our company? And it really came up with some very interesting ideas to help me consider.
Amazing, isn't it? At least to get your wheels turning on possibilities, right?
Exactly. And it's structured in a way that's it's reasonable. You can think about it, you can consider it, and then you can refine it, right? You can say, well, actually, I don't think this is the direction that makes sense. Do this, and it can start to become a real partner with you in that. So I use it for all kinds of things very consistently. I mean, I think even for internally in our company, we're creating our own version of the LLM for all this data that exists in our software, but also for my own team to access yield data, energy data, market data. All this work we've done in all these countries can now be accessed a lot easier. And in fact, we don't even have to do that anymore because now our workspace provider has brought AI into the whole platform. So all of our data is already there. So I think it's exciting and it's.
Are you testing different models just so for? I think there's probably people out there.
Yeah. I think I let my team members test all kinds of models. And I think some entrepreneurs are more restrictive, and some companies are more restrictive on what they try.
Yeah.
We have certain information which we keep in a sort of quote unquote Chinese wall, which is very very secure. And there's other information that we allow to be more fluid, and that's sort of how we operate. And I allow my team members I basically give them a budget for AI. Once AI started getting popular, I said each of you have a budget, whatever you want to trial, you can do that. And I think that kind of freedom is important when this technology is developing so rapidly.
Yeah. So and it's really really interesting, and I got an idea for you after the podcast, so I'll remind myself to do that. But let's talk about as you have that crystal ball, you look down the 1 to 2 years. Tell us where you want to the next step for Agritecture. Is it to get the product thing out? Is it to develop into some other countries? Where's your focus, you think, and where do you think your growth potential is?
Well, look, I mean, for those of you who are not familiar, vertical farming, which has been our bread and butter, we're the top vertical farming consultants in the world, right? We do other types of consulting, but that has been our bread and butter. It's gone through a downturn as a lot of the Silicon Valley funded companies that were frankly dishonest and hyped themselves up and pursued tech-driven valuations versus considering themselves farms have really harmed the entire industry. We're talking about billions of dollars that have been lost and dozens of companies that have gone out of business. So that really harmed our demand from the entrepreneur side looking to plan vertical farms. And the thing that's a shame is that small and medium scale vertical farms can be profitable. And although these big ones have failed, a lot of the ones that we work with are still successful. So it's really an unnecessary decline that occurred. But that really hurt our business because what happened is our consulting side suffered while our software was still just getting ramped up, and demand for our software also suffered because it's also based on this idea of I want to plan these kinds of farms. Right. So I had a cash flow crisis that really affected my business. I mean, we used to be 12 in the company and now we're down to 6. So as an entrepreneur, that's quite traumatic. It's part of being an
absolutely it is.
I had to make some difficult decisions. I had to lay off some incredible team members that I still miss. And I still feel bad about what happened, but I couldn't really do better than I did, to be honest.
Yeah.
So from that, now we're in a place where we're very focused on our consulting services, which we ended up ending last year with a profit and turned the company around as we dropped our costs. So that's good. but I've been very concerned about taking too many risks in general, whether it's hiring new people for this consulting or whether it's pushing the software harder. But bottom line, we see a diversification of our services with the HOT project, with the other agritourism work we're doing as a key part to our success and impact. It's more interesting, frankly, than just doing vertical farming consulting. I've been doing that for 10 years, so I'm excited to do different kinds of projects. So that's a key part of our strategy, both for resilience and impact reasons. I think we'll continue to go to new markets. Right now, I'm targeting Latin America, where it's the only continent where we haven't had clients yet. So I have a new hire who's focused on that market. On the software side, I'm going to be pivoting it soon. There's this story about this famous US bank robber. I forgot his name, Willie Sutton. Okay, Willie Sutton.
Okay.
So one of my investors reminds me of Willie Sutton. And so Willie Sutton robbed all these banks and then he got arrested. And then the press at the end is like, why are you robbing banks? And he says, because that's where the money is. And so this investor was always like, you can't make entrepreneurs your customer for the software. It's always going to be a problem. Right. So I'm shifting my customer to a different audience that has deeper pockets that still has the same benefit. So sort of think about the incentive of banks and insurance companies to insure and to fund farms. Well, they need to have tools to understand whether those applications are valuable. So this is sort of the direction I'm going, and I've probably said too much, but it's kind of exciting. So we'll see if I can pull it off, if we can pull it off as a team. But I think a major pivot for our software is in the works.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And we'll definitely be rooting for you on that for sure. So Henry, I told you I was going to ask you a couple questions at the end. One is, tell us something that you do personally. You already given us one, but any other things that you personally do with AI as a founder and that other CEOs and founders would find interesting?
I mean, I don't know. I don't know what's particularly unique about it. I mean, I also create a lot of content. So, I think if you're a founder, I'm more comfortable with it. I started as a blogger, so I'm more comfortable.
Right. You're a natural content creator, right? So that's not natural to everybody else, right?
Yeah. But I think maybe my advice to others is like, there's so much value in that, right? Like you can literally say, hey, write me a 60-second script about this topic. You can download a teleprompter app and you are going to be so much more comfortable saying things in front of the camera because you're going to have it written for you. It's going to be concise. It's going to be on time. And if you practice that enough, you can become a real content powerhouse. And in a world where video and short form video matters a lot, that's just extremely powerful. So, I think that's just a really easy one that I recommend. I think, I don't know. I use it for so many things. I don't know if it's particularly novel, but I guess that's my advice, though I see a lot of entrepreneurs and smart people that struggle with confidence and charisma and creating content. These software solutions, these LMs can really help you through that.
Amazingly so. It's great advice because I will tell you, most of the people that we get on, the founders, they're doing a little more behind the scenes, but not what you were talking about, which is creating content and using it to promote their personal brand or their company brand. Yeah.
It's just a waste.
Yeah. So magic wand time. If I give you a magic wand and this will help you, knock it out of the park in the next 12 months, what would be that one thing that would be the key to unlocking?
Something for my company, something that I want, something that I wish for.
Yeah.
Look, the software is something we've invested a lot of money and time into. And although we have happy customers with it, farms built, it's nowhere at the penetration and traction it needs to be for the impact that we want. So, I really need that to hit for me as an entrepreneur to feel like I've succeeded, and I really want to do that for me and my investors and my team members. So I think what I'm really looking for right now is a first partner, right? Almost a combination of the consulting and the software to say, we can provide services related to, let's say, Saudi Arabia. Okay, Saudi Arabia wants to plant more farms. There's no faster way than our software, no cheaper way than our software to get thousands of farmers to be exposed to how this technology works, what the business case is, and all of that. If we connected that with funding from the government and sort of use the software as an access point, that first deal that we get would unlock the future of this product. So that is my focus, is any country, Canada, Brazil, any country that wants to plan more climate smart agriculture could utilize Agritecture Designer in combination with our services and our ability to plan policy and to understand what's feasible to really make an impact. And that first case study will unlock the future of our product and our company. And so that's what I'm trying to manifest and work towards.
Yeah, so you need that breakthrough country, whatever that is, because you're right. And it becomes your lighthouse case study to roll out for everything. Yeah. No, it's fantastic. Henry, thank you so much for spending time with us
Thanks
today.
for having me.
Can't wait to get this thing up and live. But Henry, tell everybody about, we'll put all the links below as we always do, but definitely tell everybody how to get in touch with Agritecture.
Yeah, I mean, you have a couple options depending on what you're interested in. I'm the Agritech on Instagram, and I do farm tours, and you can follow my journey. I'm a global nomad for the last 5 years.
That's awesome.
So I'm in a different country pretty much every week, and you can learn about all kinds of farms. On LinkedIn, I have a weekly newsletter called the Agritech Chronicles, where every week I feature detailed analysis on the future of agriculture. And our software is very, very valuable, and it's Plan Your Farm is the promo code to get it for free. So you can go to design.agritecture.com and get that for free. But Agritecture is everywhere. You just search our name. We're very easy to reach, and you can connect with us however you want, whether it's for free content, for affordable work with our software, well, now free, or whether you want to hire us for premium services, we'd be happy to work.
That's incredible. Love it. Yeah. Henry, thank you again for spending time with us. Definitely, if you're thinking about starting any type of farm or you just need to figure out the feasibility, definitely check out Agritecture.
Thanks so much for having me. Have a great day, guys.
You too. Hey, and that's it. That wraps it up for this episode of Future Proof Podcast. Thank you, Henry. And I will just say this is where technology and leaders come together to drive business forward. So thank you.
If you're ready to embrace change and lead with innovation, be sure to subscribe and never miss an episode. Thanks for tuning in to the Future Proof Podcast.